This is part 2 for our recordings for this week, looking specifically at the development of thesis statements and the overall argument. So I recast from the previous recording the topic question that was in my notes. Are people bound to follow American laws if those laws are deemed unjust? So I'm using that as an example of a topic question that I can use then to draft my thesis statement. So overall in my essay, I would be looking to answer the question that I've posed in my topic question. So thinking about drafting a thesis statement, remember that a strong thesis explores all aspects of the topic question. So if the question asks the writer to pose a particular kind of argument or to look at a particular topic, you want to remember that as you look at drafting that thesis. Right? The thesis also needs to state a clear and concise argument, and it needs to pose a specific interpretation of the text. So thinking about your own analysis, you want to make sure that the thesis statement states what that analysis is to your reader, right? So for example, again, if I'm using the topic question that's listed above, a possible thesis statement might be, people are not ethically bound to follow laws that are based on discrimination and should practice civil disobedience in honor of democratic principles. Right? So that particular thesis statement is clear, it's concise, it suggests that I have interpreted the text that I'm using in a particular manner, and it answers the question that I've got listed above. Moving on to drafting the argument, when we're thinking about the topic sentences, kind of think of the topic sentences as mini thesis statements. So each paragraph of your essay should explore a separate point of argument. And that point of argument should be stated very clearly in the topic sentence at the beginning of each paragraph. Right? And we want to make sure that, like the thesis statement, that the topic sentences are arguable and they cannot be points of what I'm calling fact from the text. So sometimes I see this particularly with literary analysis essays, that the topic sentences tend to be facts from the text that we can't argue. So for example, you don't want to write something like, in Letter from a Birmingham Jail, Martin Luther King Jr. discusses unjust laws. That's a fact from the text. I can't argue that. Martin Luther King very clearly discusses unjust laws and what they are and his definition of those laws, so I wouldn't be able to argue that. It's not an arguable point, right? But if I want to go ahead and rework that a little bit, I might write something like, over the course of American history, unjust laws have marginalized minority groups. That someone could argue against. Someone could argue that laws are not unjust. Somebody could argue that laws do not marginalize minority groups, etc. So that would be a more appropriate sentence to use as the topic sentence of a body paragraph. So as you're working on your thesis and your argument this week, you want to think about outlining what each of your paragraphs is going to be about and to think about what point of argument you're going to pose in each of those paragraphs.